right, greetings all, and welcome back to another week. And this week being an extension from the previous week. That was a song, a very fitting song to the occasion. It's called "The Sound" by Cure. And the reason why I chose that song to play to you guys is, it's, resonating with, what we've been talking about. So this presentation is about energy and frequency. And as you would have seen from last week, we've become more aware of how energy and frequency and the forms of these, um, these aspects. And even just when you're listening to the music, especially this is music that has uplifted people. Reggae music has always been a sound that's uplifted the so-called down-pressed people, and the frequencies of the sound, especially when the likes of Bob Marley was around, it could change your negative vibration into a very positive vibration. And this is where you look out throughout, the world, all over the world, you can see that actually the best musicians are not people necessarily coming from all these privileged positions, but they're usually people coming through a struggle, through a hardship, and through the power of music. People can have very little, but yet feel so empowered, you know. And music's just one form, but when we're looking at energy, frequency, etc., there's so many aspects. The colors that we choose to wear, that's energy and frequency on another scale. Certain of the spiritual practices that people are involved in, and that calm state of being, that's again emitting another energy and frequency. But yeah, so hopefully everyone will enjoy this one. Um, I'm going to touch on some of the aspects that I was hoping to go through last week, but we had just so much to deliver. So it just wasn't possible to cram everything in last week. And I know Sohu, he's got a lot of new juicy stuff for you later. Um, so yeah, hold on to your seats, and I'm sure you will enjoy. Yeah. So what I'm gonna do first, I'm gonna take it a little bit back to basics. Yeah. Because with so much information from the last slides 2 weeks ago that we done, I still think it's very important that we just ground ourselves within the information. So hopefully, you'll get a better idea and a more fuller understanding of what's going on. So it's not a lot of slides, but I've designed it to make it a little bit simple because the information is a lot. And we want you to grasp it in its full sense and in a practical way. So, all right, let me continue. So, use some of these icons. Jaja. Okay, so when we're looking at waves, we're practically looking at the two types of waves. And we can divide the waves in electromagnetic waves and mechanical waves. So what we see here, this is known as, this is like the sine symbol, a sine wave that we use, which often depicts waves. It is often, makes more sense when we're looking at electromagnetic waves, but we're going to see how mechanically waves operate a little bit different. So if we think in our head, we're going to separate the two. We're going to think of mechanical waves and electromagnetic waves, and we're going to think of them as two separate entities, yeah? The deeper you go down the rabbit hole, you will see everything is this oneness and everything is linked, and things, can't, in its true sense, be separated. But when we understand things like, for example, the body is a body, You can see it as one body, or you could see it in many components. So we're just going to break down, just for further clarity and understanding, we're going to see it as two different types of waves: mechanical waves and electromagnetic waves. Yeah. So electromagnetic wave, it can travel through a vacuum. Yeah. So when we're talking about a vacuum, we're talking about a space which is a void, a space which is empty. So an example of an electromagnetic wave is light, for example. Yeah. So when you're looking at light or the star in the sky, you can see that light from a star traveling to your eyes. Yeah. And that light is going through a vacuum. It's going through emptiness to reach us. This is very different from sound or mechanical waves, which cannot travel through a vacuum. So when we're looking at sound, which is a mechanical wave, it has to go through different mediums like air and water. And it actually travels quicker through the water than the air. And that's probably because everything's a little bit more dense. Yeah. So simplifying, we've got the mechanical wave, which is sound. It has to go through a medium such as air and water. And then we've got the electromagnetic waves, which can jump through a vacuum such as space. So for example, if you're out in space and you're making noise, you will, and let's say there's two of you and you're communicating, let's say you could breathe through this medium, well, that wouldn't be correct, but let's just say you could stay in space for an hour and you decided to have a conversation with the person next to you in space, you will not hear anything because sound waves are mechanical and it has to travel through a medium, which we're going to see. Okay. So what we have here, we've got how waves, the distinct type of waves. So we've got electromagnetic wave, which can be through a form of light. What we can see here is it appears very much as what we call a sine wave. Yeah, this is this representation. If you saw through the previous slide, you could see that this is how this specific diagram is described mechanical waves when that's not necessarily true. So in a lot of textbooks, you can see mechanical waves being depicted like that, but it is more depicted like this. Because what happens is the sound vibration, the molecules have to knock onto each other to produce that sound. And I've got other things which will make that a little bit more clear. Yeah. So let's see here. So this is a really good video.
Longitudinal and transverse waves are the two most common wave categories discussed in a typical first-year physics course, but there's other categories at least worth mentioning, like surface waves. A water wave is a surface wave because the particles on the surface.
Okay, so
One category of waves is a transverse wave. When a transverse wave exists within a medium, the particles of the medium vibrate in a direction that is perpendicular to the direction that the wave moves. In this animation, the three dots represent three of the many particles in the medium, and you'll notice each one is vibrating up and down vertically about its fixed position. But the pattern of crests and troughs is moving from the left to the right. The direction of wave motion is perpendicular to the direction of the particle motion. When particles move in this manner, a series of crests and troughs are produced within the pattern. The crests are the high points denoted by the letter C, and the troughs are the low points denoted by the letter T. A second category of waves is known as the longitudinal wave. When a longitudinal wave exists within a medium, the particles of the medium vibrate back and forth in a direction that is parallel and anti-parallel to the direction that the wave moves. In this animation, you'll see three red dots, which represent three of the many particles of the medium. If you focus on one of the red dots and look which way the particles are moving, you'll notice that they're vibrating horizontally from left to right and right to left as the wave moves from the left end of the medium to the right end of the medium. This is a case of a longitudinal wave with the particle motion parallel and anti-parallel to the direction of wave motion. If you had a slinky that was stretched out horizontally and you wish to introduce a longitudinal wave into it, you take the first coil of the slinky and push it forward and pull it back, push it forward and pull it back, moving it horizontally. Every coil within the slinky would vibrate back and forth horizontally as the wave moves from the left end of the slinky to the right end of the slinky. The particle motion is parallel to the direction of the wave motion. There's no crests and troughs in this diagram. Instead, there's points where the coils are compressed together very tightly and other areas where they're spread apart very tightly. We refer to these points.
All right. So as you can see, with the longitudinal wave, that's more a representation of the mechanical wave, whereas we can see with the transverse waves, the going up and down, that's more the electromagnetic wave. And what's interesting, when we're looking at this, for example, longitudinal wave, we see that one particle hits another particle, and then the energy of sound is transferred from an example, the sound system to the ear. So I've got other videos just to kind of help you solidify that in the mind, yeah? Okay, so this is just an example of just the different types of electromagnetic radiation. And again, all of these things can go through a vacuum, but also it must be said that yes, it can travel through a vacuum, but it also travels through mediums as well, such as water and air. So electromagnetic waves can go through a vacuum, emptiness, through air, through water, whereas mechanical waves can only go through a medium such as air and water. And as you can see, as the frequency of the waves increase, it's actually where things become a little bit more ionizing. And ionizing basically is where they have the ability to affect an atom in a way which can actually knock an electron out of the atom. Yeah. So that's where it can be a little bit more harmful. So when you're going into, your chemotherapy and stuff like that, and even certain x-rays over, like especially the gut, it can be a little bit more dangerous. And this is why, things like chemotherapy and things like x-ray is not just done for the sake of it. There's got to be a real reason, for a medical professional to put someone at risk where, their electrons can be affected. All right, so this is again an example of how sound travels. So you've got the speaker here, and what you can see is like the wave traveling and the particles knocking on each other. And depending on the energy or the decibel of the speakers depends on how far the sound can be transmitted, So that saying, if a tree falls in the woods and you don't hear it, did it really fall? The reason why we ask that question is because let's just say if the tree, and this is the interesting concept, which I'll explain in a minute, but let's just say if the sound acted as an electromagnetic wave where it could just travel and travel, beyond its limits. One, there will be a lot of things going on. Maybe this is where, I don't know, telepaths, maybe they can sense something within this remit. But it's basically a very good thing that sound acts in a very mechanical way. Because if it didn't, we'll be bombarded with, you know, past things that's been said and just reverberating throughout space-time continuum. Um, but however, there are some, theories out there that does suggest that sound waves, and this is not what your modern physics lecturer would support, but there are some theories that look at kind of theorize how sound gives birth to this electromagnetic thing that's going on. And when you're looking at things like, for example, prayer, or things like meditation, or things like our thoughts or things that are said, although, modern science says what is said only travels so far, in our everyday reality, which is interesting, is sometimes the things that are said has a very, very long-lasting effect on everything around it. So in that sense, it does make you really try and understand maybe waves, and what we see is probably not what simple text, physics text actually says it is, as we see with things like cinematics. But I'm just going to play this video without getting too lost down the rabbit hole.
We experiment first with the tuning fork. When the fork is struck, its prongs begin to vibrate. These vibrations set up invisible waves in the surrounding air. We can picture these waves as animated drawings. Striking the prongs distorts them. Like other solid objects, these prongs resist distortion. They spring back and forth, thus producing new distortions. Each movement or vibration sets up new disturbances, or sound wave impulses. These continue as long as the prongs are in motion. The speed with which sound waves move depends upon the medium through which they pass. We will assume that these waves are being transmitted by air molecules. Every time the prongs move apart, they push against the adjacent air. In turn, this movement affects the air further on. In this segment of the wave, we can see that some molecules are pushed relatively close together. These represent condensations of air. Each time the prongs spring inward, a partial vacuum forms in their vicinity. Air molecules nearby move into this vacuum, leaving a rarefied zone behind. Thus, there are alternate zones of condensation and rarefaction of the air.
Right. So again, that's just showing how sound is moving and traveling.
We experiment.
All right. So just a little about the ear. So we've got our outer ear, which, is that physical part of the ear. Then we've got the middle ear, where we've got the three very small bones and the eardrums. And what happens is where the sound comes in, the vibration, again, through the air molecules, hitting the eardrums, the bone vibrating in a certain way and affecting the inner ear, where we've got all these different senses and the hair-like structures, which basically deal with the transmutation of this very mechanical stimulus, which then turns around these regions with your auditory nerve into an electrical signal for it to be understood by the brain. So, when we're looking at the brain is not just taking that raw mechanical stimulus, it's actually converting it into an electrical impulse. And a lot of the things through our nerves and senses is always about that conversion of one stimulus, whether it be chemical, mechanical, into an electrical stimulus for us to interpret it. Is this video here?
Have you ever wondered how sounds make their way from the source all the way to your brain? Take a trumpet, for instance. When it's played, it makes sound waves in the air. The outer ear catches the waves, which then travel through a narrow passageway called the ear canal. The sound waves reach the eardrum, which is a membrane roughly half the size of a dime. They make the eardrum vibrate, which in turn vibrates 3 tiny bones called the malleus, incus, and stapes. These bones amplify or increase the sound vibrations and send them to the cochlea. The cochlea is shaped like a snail and is the size of a garden pea. It is filled with fluid, and the sound vibrations make this fluid ripple, which creates waves. Hair-like structures called stereocilia sit on top of hair cells and are grouped together as hair cell bundles inside the cochlea. The hair cells inside the cochlea ride these waves, and the hair bundles are moved. The hair bundle on top of the hair cell turns these movements into electrical signals. As the hair bundles are moved, ions rush into the top of the hair cells, causing the release of chemicals at the bottom of the hair cells. The chemicals bind to the auditory nerve cells and create an electrical signal, which travels along the auditory nerve to the brain. Different hair cells respond to different frequencies of sound. The hair cells at the base of the cochlea detect higher-pitched sounds, such as a piccolo or flute. The hair cells toward the top of the spiral detect progressively lower-pitched sounds, such as a trumpet or trombone. At the very top or apex of the spiral, the hair cells detect the lowest-pitched sounds, such as a tuba. The auditory nerve carries the electrical signal to the brain, which interprets the messages as sounds that we recognize and understand.
Right. So yeah, this is so the sound. When we look at a lot of the scriptures, like the Bible and stuff like that, it always mentions about the sound coming into the first thing that came into existence. Um, and in the beginning was the word. And you know, we can look at that in so many different ways. We can look at it as in a sense of what we speak physically, creating all these different realities, the consequences of our words, the consequences of, you know, our actions. Or we can even look at it even in a mental sense, you know, where we're looking at the things that we think about is first manifested in the mind, you know, and then that mind or that mental projection basically leads to whatever very mechanical actions that we do, whether it's through our hands or through making something or building something. So it is an interesting concept. This is just an excerpt from, it was a book I shared last week. I forgot the name of it now. Maybe if anyone got the book that I talked about last week, maybe they can write it in the chat. But the question is, so what is that sound? So for example, sound, so this article is looking at sound not in the traditional mechanical way, but seeing it more evolved than what it's usually described as. So for example, sound is not a vibration of the air. A sound wave, we know today, is an electromagnetic process involving the rapid assembly and disassembly of geometrical configurations of molecules. Yeah, so that is really, really interesting. So it says, I'll repeat that again. A sound wave, we know today, is an electromagnetic process involving the rapid assembly and disassembly of geometrical configurations of molecules. In modern physics, this kind of self-organizing process is known as a soliton. Although much more detailed experimental work needs to be done, we know in principle that different frequencies of coherent solitons correspond to distinct geometries on the microscopic or the quantum levels of organization of the process. This was already indicated by the work of Helmholtz, um, contemporary Bernard Riemann, who refuted most of the acoustic doctrines of Helmholtz in his 1859 paper on acoustical shock waves. And then sound is thought of not a two-dimensional sine wave. So remember, the sine wave is just that wave that's going up and down. As we can see, we know mechanical waves are meant to be more the longitudinal one, with the air bumping into each other rather than going up and down. So that alone just shows how some of the old concepts mixing with the new concepts, there's still a little bit of confusion around that. So sound is thought of not a two-dimensional sine wave, but maybe a complex geometrical pattern moving through a medium such as water. So in regards to where it's talking about the complex geometrical pattern, we're actually talking about the cinematics, which Sahu showed you with, for example, sound frequencies on a drum and soldiers on the drum will form a pattern. Yeah, so it's saying that sound is moving like these patterns, as we can also see with Emoto and his work with the crystals and freezing the crystals and speaking words like I love you or I hate you, and then seeing how the crystals form. So it's basically saying that all might not be, the take-home message I get from this is all is not what it seems, and it's not as simple as it's made out to be. It's not complex in the way that should create confusion, but there's more to sound, and we know this intuitively through when we're hearing music or when we're in a holy place or when we're chanting or whatever we do, how we can feel these healing responses happening in the body. So we know there's more to it than just A plus B equals C. There's something more magical and wonderful happening. And then to tell the truth, I'm not too sure if I got that from this book actually. There was another paper, it was quite an old paper as well, however, but it did look at sound, you know, being part of this electromagnetic process that takes place. So at the beginning, where I was just talking briefly about this oneness of thing, it's showing that there is a oneness to this electromagnetic wave and this mechanical wave that are going on. But definitely more research needs to take place. So this is cinematics, and basically the direct definition is the study of sound and vibration made visible through a medium. Yeah. So we can see that through like Dr. Masaru Emoto's work. And these are when he done the experiment where he frees the water after playing a sound or saying words like truth, thank you, I love you, eternal. And then you can see the deranged crystals or snowflake frozen water molecules with you fool evil. I think that's some word I can't fully read that, but these ones are positive words at the top and negative words at the bottom. Yeah. Um, so again, that's another example of how words have such a big influence on our being, because remember we're like 80% water. Some books will say 90% water, some will say 70% water, but we know we're made up of this thing, water. So the words we use had a big impact on, our vibration and our energy, our frequency. However, what he did show, it wasn't just the words that he was using, but it was really about the intention, because, especially, you got different cultures and, people can say, oh, that was just bad. It wasn't like, oh, that was bad. That was really, really bad. But it was like, oh, yeah, that drummer, he's bad, he's bad, So it's a different expression. And he found that it was more the intention and the way it was expressed. Because as far as I'm aware, water doesn't understand English, but it does understand the frequency, it does understand the tone. Likewise, same as the universe. When we're looking at the universe and even hydrogen just being that first element and everything being a duplication of hydrogen in some way, shape, or form, um, we again look at that. It's not really about necessarily what is said or what is done, even though that's important because it has consequences, but the intention of what is said, the intention of what is done, because you can be in a situation where, let's say, you're working towards something. And sometimes, especially in this day and age, we can be working towards something and we could do something which is detrimental to our body, like just striving and grafting. But then the intention behind what we're doing, there might be something we're motivated by, where we might not feel the effects of a father or a single mother or a single father working ridiculous hours to feed their family. Again, the working ridiculous hours is bad for our body, but and without having something to strive for, like their family, they may not actually be able to do that physical work, but just that intention and the better good of the situation is what will give people the power and the energy to keep pushing them through. So we see time and time again that this universe that we're living is based on intention. And this is where I feel maybe we're looking at the different words and it's all wordplay, but when we're looking at the entirety of things, we can see that whatever you want to call it, there's power with our intentions. There's power with the peace that we have. There's power with the practices we do to keep our temple clean and clear and our mind clean and clear to really access the full power of the universe. So yeah, and just the thought, can light exist without sound? What comes first, sound or light? If we're looking at purely the biblical text, it will definitely say sound. Um, but a lot of life and experience is we have to find out these things for ourselves as well. It's not just about taking things and reading things and just say, oh, this is true. This person said it, this is true. We have to question everything. And even when the answer seems so obvious, the process of questioning things help you understand things at a deeper level. We go, okay, what comes before the thunder or the lightning? You know, we often hear the thunder, and I hope I'm saying it right. I haven't seen lightning in a little while now, but often we see the lightning and then we'll hear the thunder. But that's only time. So we know that the light, travels very quickly. But just because the light is traveling quick, and I'm not a physics teacher, it's just a question of debate. Even though the light travels quicker, that's just separated by time and distance. But there would be, from the way I see it, just analyzing when we get other situations where, let's say, for example, okay, this I was watching a video there, and some people might have seen this. There was this blind boy in America, and despite him being blind, he was shooting hoops, and he was really good at shooting hoops, and he would shoot better than definitely me. And I've got two eyes that can see. But this blind boy was shooting hoops better than me. And what he was doing, he was making a sound, which again is very mechanical. And with the sound waves, he could see flashes of light like a bat within his inner mind. And that's what he was describing anyway. Who knows, who can verify that? But it was like he was making a sound, and it was the sound was bouncing off, and he would gain a very mental image of what he was seeing. And that's where he was able to do things like a normal child, like skate. But he was constantly making this clicking sound, this very mechanical sound, just to understand his environment. But yeah, so it's just the thought, you know, what is first? What does come first? In some situation, we will see the lightning before the thunder. But then when we're in that very moment, or if the lightning happened right next to us, we will see them both happening at the same time, and our brain wouldn't be able to distinguish what's happening first. But again, then there's this mechanical process of something happening in the atmosphere to even produce a lightning. So it's really interesting when we're looking at this whole spectrum of sound, light, and this whole other thing that is not well appreciated by science, such as chi energy and scalar energy that Sahu's going to touch on now. Um, but yeah, so that was just the basic, just to help the mind grasp what was happening when we was talking on the previous talks, and so we can just get a better understanding and be able to research more. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Christos. That was quite in depth. That was really good. Got some clarity on sound waves in a way which definitely connects with what I'm going to go through in a moment. Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole mechanical wave and the electromagnetic wave, all that stuff there right now.
Mm.
Thanks to Christos, we have a little bit more clarity. So when I talk in a few moments, you're going to see stuff clearer, especially when we get to that aspect of the science, even though we're not going to go too deep into that part then.
Well, we find that even the science is there, definitely, and it's written in textbook, but when we really appreciate it, even the scientists know that they still don't fully grasp it.
Yeah,
And there's just so much more, so it can't be simplified. But it's good. I think that it just offers that room for not to think in an old paradigm, where we can think in a very practical way, kind of like what Tesla was saying, where
that's
he
right.
was saying that once you understand the world through waves or energy and frequencies, then you get a full understanding of the world. And that's why practice and meditation and Tai Chi and chanting, all of these things are really going to make you more grasp that reality. Because if it was that simple, what I would have said would be like magic. I
Hmm.
would have given the keys to the universe. Obviously, I haven't done that in that lecture.
Oh, yes, you have. You have, because there's looks like in the mansion, there's many doors going on here.
True.
And
It's true.
we have to unlock and make everything flow.
Yeah.
But that aspect is of vital importance.
Hmm.
And that is why frequencies have been changed, sound waves have been manipulated, so they affect the body slightly differently. That's why
Yeah.
there's been a suppression of this stuff intentionally for at least 150 years, intentionally. And they just went overdrive
Yeah.
from rap music, really.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking the other day, actually, how really it's probably Motown, around Motown and rock music. Yeah, because even in Motown, there was a shift from singing those to sing with their natural voice, trying to fit into what the mainstream wanted of higher tones.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
A lot of the singers had to change the way in which just to fit why it done so well. Right, Christos, I think we're ready,
Right.
In a moment, we're just gonna go down the rabbit hole. Because Christos didn't want to take us down the rabbit hole, yeah. Oh man, I'm gonna take you down the rabbit hole. All I know is that this stuff here, we just gotta breathe, give thanks to what we're gonna just absorb in a few moments. Yeah, so we are gonna talk about energy from its most fundamental aspect, and it was going to work us all the way into this modern day appreciation, and I'm gonna call modern day old day, which is chi. But we're just gonna go through stages. So it's an overview, and this overview is also looking at future applications of what we're going to describe. A lot of the stuff is going to be diving into basic physics. Yeah. So all that stuff there, I may have to repeat myself a few times. But when we're looking at physics in a modern era, there are stuff missing out in the textbooks, which you find in university. But then the issue is there's only small departments that are looking into this. It's not like it's a general knowledge or a general appreciation. So when we start to delve into scalar technology or understanding of the scalar field, this is the kind of stuff which is available, which is possible. And this is through the equation which they've done, and also applications through technology that we've seen. So we're looking at free energy as one of the things: DNA repair, rejuvenation, regeneration. Some of the stuff we was talking about last time: levitation, invisibility, to be able to communicate faster than light. There's a reason for all of this: time travel, immortality, or to live longer, because that's another thing, and to move faster than light itself. So these are the possibilities when you add in another layer into modern physics. That's all you have to do, is add in another layer. So what is energy? Quantitatively, it relates to measuring or something being measured, a quantity of something, a quality of something, sorry. A quantity of something rather than a quality. So properties that is transferred to a body or to a physical system. And this is recognized as work being performed. So energy is understood as work being performed. And this can be in the form of heat and light. And also, when we are looking at energy, we're appreciating that energy is not just created out of nothingness. Energy itself, and it's neither destroyed. And there are reasons for this. And the simple meaning of a scalar is a simple physical quantity that is not changed by coordinate or by translation. So this means basically that it's a single unit that does not move. So scalar is a term that means a unit that can be scaled, and it can be any unit. So scalar basically means a single value. And this is what we learn in actually a GCSE level. And a scalar field is one value. So within that space, within that field, each point has one value. So we can look at a room with heat in it, a room with temperature, and each point in that room had its own value. And that's not changing, just that point. You go to another point in that room there, and it may be a different temperature, but that's the point at which it is. It has that value. And that's how it works with appreciating a scalar field on the GCSE level. And that can be applied to anything from latitude to height to mass, weight. That can be applied to any substance, any value, anything in this world here. So almost anything is really scalar when we look at it from this level, and this is how it's generally looked at. But when we have to also add to this, so that is just the magnitude, just the quality, just the amount, the scalar. And when you add to it now, vector, because these two come together when we're looking at physics, the vector is dealing with the magnitude and a direction. Because scalar doesn't deal with direction. Scalar is not moving in that sense there. Scalar is in a point or in a position. And when we're looking at a vector field, and vector fields, if I go ahead of myself, are like electromagnetic fields. Each point in the field has magnitude and a direction within the field, and it's pointing in a direction. So you can have a curl to it. It can be pointing in a direction with a curl. But all of this is happening in the space, what we call nothingness. This is the beautiful thing. This space, in one sense, or one era, it was known as the ether, this invisible substance. In Tai Chi, or in the I Ching, there is something called Wu Chi. And Wu Chi is this space of nothingness. But this nothingness has a value. No movement is still, but it has a quality to it. And it's not no different from Nun as well, from ancient Kemet. This primordial waters, this nothingness, this emptiness, this space where chaos exists. So it's a quality within it. It's just in one place again. All through these different cultures, there was this description of what we now are calling scalar. So we have to connect these dots together just to have a little clarity going forward, so we can actually use this stuff practically. So recently, they've discovered something called the Higgs boson. So when we're talking about this emptiness of space, this vacuum that sound is moving through. Sorry, that sound cannot move through because it needs a medium, but there are other waves that can move through this vacuum of space. But this space itself is scalar, the scalar field. And when they were doing their experiments with the Hadron Collider and observing how the particle moved around in CERN, they found this constant, and they call it the God particle, only because this particle they found, and they describe it relating to the Big Bang itself, if you follow this concept. So we're just going to briefly do a short, it's like a 3 minutes, describing.
12 was the discovery of a new particle at the CERN.
Describing what it is, so we can just broaden our awareness.
Laboratory that could be the Higgs boson, a particle named after physicist Peter Higgs. The Higgs field is thought to give mass to fundamental subatomic particles like the quarks and leptons that make up ordinary matter. The Higgs bosons are wiggles in the field, like the bump you see when you twitch a rope. But how does this field give mass to particles? If this sounds confusing to you, you're not alone. In 1993, the British science minister challenged physicists to invent a simple way to understand all this Higgs stuff. The prize was a bottle of quality champagne. The winning explanation went something like this. Suppose there is a large cocktail party at the CERN laboratory filled with particle physics researchers. This crowd of physicists represents the Higgs field. If a tax collector entered the party, nobody would want to talk to them, and they could very easily cross the room to get to the bar. The tax collector wouldn't interact with the crowd in much the same way that some particles don't interact with the Higgs field. The particles that don't interact, like photons for example, are called massless. Now suppose that Peter Higgs entered the same room, perhaps in search of a pint. In this case, the physicists will immediately crowd around Higgs to discuss with him their efforts to measure the properties of his namesake boson. Because he interacts strongly with the crowd, Higgs will move slowly across the room. Continuing our analogy, Higgs has become a massive particle through his interactions with the field. So, if that's the Higgs field, how does the Higgs boson fit into all of this? Let's pretend our crowd of partygoers is uniformly spread across the room. Now suppose someone pops their head in the door to report a rumor of a discovery at some distant rival laboratory. People near the door will hear the rumor, but people far away won't.
Just for a moment, so even in this room itself, this room is called a Higgs field, but when we were describing what a scalar field was, and we was talking about a room with temperature throughout the room at each point itself, representing a unique temperature. Looking at people, it's the same. In this room, the people are there, and each person represents a unit. As they're standing still in this moment here, each in their group. So each individual unit represents a mass or a certain quality.
So they'll move closer to the door to ask. This will create a clump in the crowd. As people have heard the rumor, they will return to their original positions to discuss its implications, but people further away will then ask what's going on. The result will be a clump in the crowd that moves across the room. This clump is analogous to the Higgs boson. It is important to remember that it is not that massive particles interact more with the Higgs field. In our analogy of the party, all particles are equal until they enter the room. Both Peter Higgs and the tax collector have zero mass. It is the interaction with the crowd that causes them to gain mass. I'll say that again. Mass comes from interactions with the field. So let's recap. A particle gets more or less mass depending on how it interacts with the field, just like different people will move through the crowd at different speeds depending on their popularity. And the Higgs boson is just a clump in the field, like a rumor crossing the room. Of course, this analogy is just that, an analogy, but it's the best analogy anyone has come up with so far. So that's it.
Hope that gives a little bit of clarity. So we're talking about now this vacuum of space where these particles are moving through on a anatomical level. And that's even if it moves like this. I'm not even going to go there because there's possibility that we're like this. And I'm unsure when we're looking at physics, even if the difference between the two concepts that here, we are moving around the sun, moving through space, or if we are actually the sun itself, Earth. Earth is moving through space like this. And the sun and the moon. And again, all this stuff here will shift the way in which we understand physics, or the way we understand the technology that we are going to be creating in the future. But as it's moving through that vacuum of space, there is something that's been recently found as well. These Birkeland currents. These Birkeland currents are like electrical cables that are in space. They connect galaxies together, what they found in their research. They come in and touch Earth, make the aurora borealis. As they interact with Earth, they energize the planet itself with electricity or voltage or more electrons. So these Birkeland currents are intertwining helix structures that are found throughout space, and they're shown to tether and connect planetary bodies together. These Birkeland currents are basically plasma. So then as these particles are moving through, they are just gathering mass, as we were just hearing from the Higgs boson description. So when we're looking at different states of plasma, we're looking at energy usage in a different way. So the aurora borealis was described through the Birkeland currents coming through, and it also is something that they found when we're looking at the electric universe, that they have, this creates also electricity, and lightning. And lightning is an experience that comes from above and below simultaneously. Lightning is not just a thing that comes from sky and hit the earth. The earth itself is generating an electrical current that's coming up. And this is happening in various aspects of the ionosphere, or the atmosphere. So you can even see these currents just in certain level of the atmosphere. The same plasma, this full state of matter that we're getting into, has been used when it comes to welding, to neon light. It's the same plasma. So plasma is something that is considered usually needs to be heated, superheated, in order to create this effect. The plasma we receive here on Earth as a form of energy is generally the sun. The protons mixed with the electrons from the Earth puts a field around our body. So this full state of matter is only now we're really looking into it, because we've just been playing around with just the three states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. We all know about that. However, when we go on the journey of trying to understand matter, when these particles start to join together, we find that there are like 22, and I know there's going to be more, different states of matter. The Bose-Einstein and the time crystal are probably the most recent states of matter that I've come across. The time crystal is an interesting one. So they say from their research, and remember, this is all energy, because energy as well, the atom itself requires bonds, and it requires a certain amount of energy to keep the bonds together or to separate the bonds. These bonds create either movement or some form of geometry when we're looking at cymatics. So the time crystals, they found that in this particular atom is this crystalline structure. And everything is crystalline to a degree, but crystal structure is a pattern that repeats itself. So we look at a crystal and believe that's what a crystal is. Our bone is crystalline, our muscles are crystalline. A structure that repeats itself is crystalline and has layers to it. And the time crystal, as it changes and it goes into a new phase, it's like it repeats itself and goes back to its original form. So then in observing this particular atomic structure, this is where they believe that they can manipulate time, or they can create something that, these are possibilities. These are possibilities. But they have observed what they call a time crystal. It's intriguing stuff. But when we're looking at on an atomic level, though, even whatever atom it is, whether an electron, a proton, a neutron, we are generally observing it from an old perception that they try to instill into us. So on the right, you have this structure of an atom moving around. So we would think that it moves this way. Or we would think also that it moves in a way where it's whizzing around rapidly. It's making a cloud as the atom is moving. So as atoms join together, they're all having this chaotic cloud-like expression. Again, recent research show that an atom doesn't move like this. It seems like it moves in a way where it's connected to the center through these strands. And as it rotates round, it's like the strand unravels on each rotation. So they never tangle up. So then if you have a nucleus in the center, you have an electron on the outside, whether it be 2 or 4 electrons. You have this cord that connects them to the center, is what they found at the moment. And as it's moving, it's rotating and maintaining its space, just like this. And this expands itself out further. Research is finding the same as the old world, that things are connected energetically through energetic lines or cords that are unseen. The same from the Birkeling currents that are connecting galaxies together. Galaxies, solar systems, suns, stars, and planets all together. Everything is tethered and connected somehow, all the way to the center of an atom, tethering all the way out to a star, a thread. This is how I'm looking at it at the moment from all the research that's been presented to us. And this connection here is like an entanglement as well, called this quantum entanglement, where you can have 2 objects in 2 different locations, but are connected to each other, are still connected through what they call an invisible thread. That is quantum entanglement. Once you make connection or touch something, you're forever connected. They found this in some research. I should have looked into that in the 1800s by some Russian czar. A book on a book on yoga, and it was describing something similar because they were doing research of psychic work, and they had like groups of people where they had them in rooms, and they'll bring them into another room with a box, and inside the box there'll be either an instruction or there'll be an object, and then the person will have to come into the room, go back and draw out or write down. Then they had other experiments where they didn't have to go into the room, they done it from their location. But what they found, that when they made contact with it psychically and touched the object, like they could see in their psychic mind like a purple cord, how it was described. Count, look that one up again. It's count it will come to me in a moment. Yeah, but they found that there was a cord connected from the person to the object. So quantum entanglement seemed like it was found already in the 1850s, 1800s. And this all leads us to being everything connected. This all leads us to appreciating the different types of energy. So Christos went through sound, light, and frequency. We have biological types. So that's all electromagnetic. All the sound as well can be broken down into mechanical. But we're looking at it from this point of view, energetically, from the build-up of the scalar field. We have it biologically as well. And we will hopefully, because we're not doing it today, but we will hopefully go through that in the future, where we're looking at piezoelectricity, pyroelectricity, photo, thermo, electrogenic. So when our body produces voltage in order to get work done, and the interaction of different elements in the world create voltage internally. So we have also electromagnetism as well, which we're going to touch a little bit. But the main thing we're going to touch upon is scalar, this type of energy. So we basically just broke down that in the nothingness of space, there is something. In the nothingness of space, there is something. And this is what we're understanding in this moment. All right, so when we get into scalar physics now, we're looking at 3 different things. And this is GCSE level, again. find this in a normal textbook, except for the last one. I say that like it's normal, actually. So force fields and potential fields, that is normal, or should I say found in a regular physics book. But scalar superpotentials, it's a bit different. And only because the modern, let's say, school and university science, they haven't given this field a proper name. Let's say they haven't all agreed to a proper name for this particular field. And this is the same thing going back over 150 years, where this particular aspect of it, the nothingness, what's going on in that space there, is no different from what the old one said. So when we're trying to apply it, it's just mathematics that we're trying to understand. So when it comes to force fields, we have electric field, how electricity is formed, and that is always a situation where the positive pole is, or the positive ion, the positive proton is going towards the negative, the electron. But in a magnetic field, it can move either way. North to south, south to north. That's how magnetism is created. And then and we have gravitational field, which is like what keeps planets together. And when it comes to the idea of gravity, we can have strong, weak gravity. So it really depends. But gravity is the idea that I kind of shifted to the concept of pressure, as I can see in nature, in the world, how gravity can be defied constantly. But it's just the way physics has described gravity. I think that personally, I never really got with that description there. So I was always constantly redefining gravity. Always. We're not going to go into weak bonds and strong bonds. So when it comes to potentials, so the potential is what creates the field. Yeah? So we have a electric scalar potential. The electric scalar potential is what creates electricity. And then we have a magnetic vector potential. And this is what creates magnetism. And we have a gravitational scalar potential. And this is what creates gravity or gravitational pull. So these potentials are more fundamental They are earlier states than the actual forces themselves. So the force fields, they are coming from these potentials, and depend upon how much magnitude is in that potential determines the output. And that will be the same for magnetism. Depend upon the magnitude, how much magnetic force is there and the direction it's heading into, all that potential is limitless, and it's coming from this field here. And the same for a gravitational pull. So as we understand the term scalar to mean something that's not moving. So this gravitational potential is not moving. It's in a point. As something moves past it, we'll just bump over it. Same as electricity. This is a potential. This is a value, a single value that is not moving. How do we get actual then electricity moving? If I just say this quickly off the top of my head, it come like as the electrons are within a cable, it's the magnetic field that is moving the electricity current. The protons are coming in and are being pushed off, which is creating more electrons to fill up the space. So the space in front is filled up with electrons. The protons are being pushed away, and the electromagnetic field around the cable is pushing the current forward. And all that is coming from the potential. But then the problem is, from what now I'm seeing, because for years I'm trying to understand what's the problem then, and it seemed like divergence is the issue, and divergence is dealing with contraction and expansion. This is the problem why all that stuff I'm saying at the beginning isn't happening. No fast and light communication, no levitation. So the buses or vehicles are not levitating at the moment. There's no plasma technology. There's no regeneration of limbs. And it seems like just simply because of this simple aspect here. I know there are other factors to factor in, but this magnetic vector potential issue where they're unable to find a significant value for it. And from what I'm understanding, it's because it's had a magnitude and a direction. It has a curl, it has a movement. This potential is fluctuating. It may not be steady. And it's also compressing and moving. The mathematics is too much. So as a result, they give the value 0 and it throws off the whole equation. And they've got a lovely option as way out for this. They just give the value opposite. So they just give the electric scalar potential value, because the electric scalar potential and the magnetic vector potential together create something else with gravitational potential. So this whole issue, it looked like it's coming from air. But when you add those 3 different potentials together, it's just like describing that when it comes to energy, there's just 2 things we're looking at, scalar and vector. The magnitude, or how much force, how much power, what the quality is, and where it's going. But if you can observe from the quantum work that's being done at the moment, if you can observe change over time with an electric scalar potential, if you know how to manipulate this one here, or a magnetic vector potential, which is over space, and manipulate the divergence of gravity, which is the expansion and the contraction over time, then you can directly take energy from the scalar superpotential. And this is what a machine which will be rejuvenating the body basically doing. So we don't need to go into transverse electromagnetic wave, but the way in which it oscillates, how Christos was describing, why it moves, is because of the curl. And the longitudinal wave is oscillating from its center out. And the curl itself is allowing for the atoms, in this space, due to this magnetic vector potential. So you have a longitudinal wave, a mix of an electric scalar potential mixed with a gravitational potential. This creates a longitudinal wave. And as Christos described this is how these waves are looking. The heaviest moment we're going to get into and I know at the moment, there's only going to be a few people that's really going to appreciate what I'm saying here, especially at this level of physics, right? The field equations. So from what I'm observing in quantum physics and physics at the moment, I'm trying to understand how to use scalar energy, how to move scalar from one device to another device, or from one person, from a machine to a person. I had to influence them. We have this magnetic field. So it's these 3 things. If in the equation you can make the helical curl of the gradient, if you can figure that and it equals the magnetic field, Also, the electric field, if you can figure out how the gradient over time within the scalar potential, and also the gravitational field, as this equals the gradient in a divergence, and the divergence is oscillating, contracting and compressing, and the gradient is shifting up and down. This is happening within the superpotential field, and that's in the space of nothingness. This is in the space before. So you know when we're talking about the darkness, the dark matter, this is before things have taken to life, have taken to movement, before physical matter has been created. This is what we're looking at, how we're taking it from when you would say it's non-local. When we say that the scalar energy is not in this space-time, it's not here. It's like it's coming from another universe, sorry, another dimension, another space. This is what is meant by all of this, is that because we're looking at from the initial stage of a field, then you're looking, where does the field emanate from? And the field emanates from potentials or potential. Where does the potential resonate or emanate from? And that field is called a superpotential, a scalar superpotential. But you don't even have to, even if it wasn't called that name, and sometimes it feels endless going back through time. But even if on the last equation, because I know I explained it here, but they got this equation, and what I was taking it from actually was the actual equation. I had to go through the equation and write the equation into English, translating the language, because the equations, they look nice, and then that's not my natural language. So if the gravitational field equals the gradient in a time varying scalar potential that varies over time, if we can manipulate if we can manipulate these four, and as we are manipulating them, we have the ability to create endless things. But these endless things that we can create, there's only two things, it seems, that we really have to be aware of. And that is the curl, the flux of an electromagnetic wave and electric wave or potential or electric field, the magnetic field, how in which it moves or rotates. If that can be controlled, the way in which it curls, the sign itself, or the way in which it rotates, then it seems like this is where we have amazing possibilities. But these possibilities have been taken away because this aspect of physics is actually not in the physics books. What I'm talking here, what I'm trying to describe, much more work to be done, much more clarity in myself that I have to seek. You see, Tesla done a lot of good work, which has been suppressed. He had the ability, or developed technology, I should say, at these dinner parties, where he would, with the plasma ball, he would transfer electricity, or he would hold plasma directly in his hands. So we have this technology going on, and loads of other technology, especially this technology here that a lot of us are starting to hear about, like the med beds, which are utilizing these longitudinal waves, which heal the body and reduce pain. And that is done through restoring the centripetal and the negentropic charge, this entanglement. So when a cell is not functioning or an atom isn't, it's like it's tangled. Once that geometry can be reorganized and reordered to its original state, which come like what this boson or this scalar would be doing. When you go into the superpotential field, how do we utilize this? All right, so I think a few more slides. So we're just rounding this all up. Like there is a huge difference between electromagnetism and a scalar energy, and they do move differently. So we're looking at sound and light, and they are not moving like a sound wave. They are oscillating and looking like a vortex. And the same as well for the scalar, it's like a point. You know, when we're looking at the cymatics being created, or when we're looking at old geometry from old temples, from old religions, you find this dot or these concentric circles. When you go 30,000 years ago, Australia, looking at certain of these caves, you see the same concentric circles. And this is in one place. And this is representing scalar. So we have appreciated this scalar energy, which moves in a vortex state, even a wave itself. So energy itself is vortex expression. And with this electromagnetic spectrum, it's like we see stuff, a very small aspect of it, but the rest of it, we're connecting through our senses, electromagnetically or through our nerve impulses. All right, so to round it up, scalar energy. The scalar is formed from non-local energy. It carries information, universal information, blueprint. All this is to do with intention. Almost the intelligence of such things is that it shifts to the desire or to the intention in the moment. It like have no original geometric pattern shape. Once interacting, takes life and take form. This is how the information seems to affect us on a DNA level. And this is, again, scalar is fractal in its structure. This is the geometry. And it does not decay, so its fractal nature doesn't change. Its blueprint does not change. The cosmic blueprint of everything that it holds within the atomic structure of a scalar field, sorry, a scalar, from its scalar superpotential field point of view, from the nothingness. Accessing from that point through some kind of quantum entanglement, through cells connecting, through atoms connecting. This is why it's not decaying over time or distance. Because it only propagates through time. It doesn't go through space. It only exists in that space there, in that moment there, in that space. It's not moving in the sense of a forward motion. It's compressed, it's expanding and contracting because the rotation of it has been cancelled. This is how a scalar is operating as a single unit on an atomic level. And this can directly interact with our DNA. So our DNA is a quantum antenna and is able to receive and send information. All we have to do is to bring ourselves into alignment, to tune ourselves in with our intention, with our divine truth. So scalar waves also can interact with any mobilus coil system in the human body. So in engineering, we're looking at this, there's the same circular, which has a rotation in it. So this description at the bottom is like what they use as a resistor. But for us, a resistor would be our ribs, as an example, the DNA coil itself, anything really that has a spiral or a circular component to it, as we're looking through the anatomy of our body. And there are many different aspects of that. You ponder upon that one there. So the whole thing comes to the appreciation that scalar energy itself is chi, prana, mana, ki, so many names. All those names were given to life force, but they were given to a primordial form of life force that we're trying to tap into through intention and practice. You can use your physical form to tap in to scalar, or you can use a machine or a device utilizing mathematical formula. Some of the aspect, I try my best to explain there of the physics that you would do in order to create that connection there. Scalar energy itself, from how I'm understanding it now, this is what we feel emanating from palm or emanating from our body. When we do like theta healing or distance healing, mind to mind, and it happens instantaneously, you just feel the person feels better in that moment. This is scalar, what they're using the term scalar for now. So all we have to do is just appreciate that words evolve over time and they have their connection to older concepts. And the oldest concepts, it seems like we have to bring them back in so we can actually grow and expand the whole of this understanding of what now in physics, quantum physics, called scalar energy. And it is an energy around us in every moment. That level of knowledge is university, I would say. We're not going to find this in a physics GCSE or A level, or even actually at university. It's more professors that are going to be coming across this stuff here. But it needs to be standardized knowledge so then we can just grow as a people, because this knowledge is basic in a sense. It's just the fundamental aspect of reality. All right. We're going to finish up there.
Wow. That was really good. Yeah, no, there definitely a lot.
You know?
Definitely a lot. And it just makes you appreciate that you can't, it's evolving so much that if you get stuck on the language of things, you will
Yeah.
get lost.
Yeah. That's very true. And it will end up delaying your development because you're stuck on the old thought or words or explanation, and our ego gets involved, and then we don't grow. Don't grow. Our ego stops us from evolving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And even the sign, the symbols, it changes, you know.
But
And
that's deep. You say that. Does it really change the sign and the symbols?
I mean, in reality, no.
Okay.
But our interpretation of reality, yes.
Okay. I true
You
that.
know, for example, the atom that you were showing, you
Yeah.
know, with all the waves now, depending on how open your mind is, you're going to feel uncomfortable
Yeah.
with seeing that image
Yeah. Because it
because it's an image you've seen now from primary school
telling
and
you.
you're like 60 years old and you've seen that image since primary school. And then basically it's telling you your reality was never what you thought it was. And you've been living in your head all this time. However, when you go through the practical aspects of things, and this is what I feel is the most important thing, how is this information, how am I going to apply it practically?
That's right. That's all I've ever tried to understand with this stuff here. How do we apply it? But there's two levels to application, isn't it? There's building something mechanical or a machine, and there's
Mhm.
your own body.
Yeah, yeah. And I think most of us will be just have to just be with our own body. You know, can I make this pain that's been there forever get better
Yeah, you see it there.
by going somewhere where there's less radiation, or maybe even better, maybe if I don't have my phone so close to my head when I'm sleeping, you know, just starting off something simple like that. Or if I wear these crystals around this painful joint or copper around the painful joint, is it really going to make a difference? You know, these are the questions that we have to ask ourselves, and then it unlocks the other mysteries.
Because I would definitely say that what one definitely needs to investigate and invest in is your electric field. I know we talk electromagnetic field, but what can, because that's what you're describing here. That's what you're
Mm.
talking about. But how can we, because the electric field is different, the electromagnetic field,
Mhm.
because we're looking at electrons,
Mhm.
just the electrons putting a field around you. How do
Mm.
we make sure that we have a field of electrons around our body?
Mm.
Yeah, because that's what grounding would be doing. When you're talking about
Yeah.
grounding, it's like the electrons from the earth is coming up and it's filling up the body, and it's also placing a field around the body
Mhm.
of electrons. Yeah. So
Then even just the rain,
yeah,
being out there on a rainy day.
yeah. You know, that is, you see, our problem is it's cold, isn't it? But that is the beauty when it rain. Pure electrons, only for electrons. But so that would be working on the electric field. It's just that we just now understand when we're working on the electric field, that is electric scalar potential. And that's just coming from the scalar field, how these electrons are connecting together. Because we're in this space, taking it from here, in this moment, in the vacuum of, well, not vacuum, sorry, in the emptiness, what we call
Mm.
air.
Yeah.
So that's probably more practical, isn't it? What to do now with this, all this, but from a technological point of view, it's just understanding how a med bed would work.
Yeah. I mean, there was that guy from Africa, somewhere in Africa, where he had a TV, and from the waves, without even plugging in the TV, he was able to power the TV on.
I'm saying the free
Yeah.
energy. So, is there any questions there from anybody before we?
I think I saw some comments. People definitely going to rewatch that one.
Yeah, boy, I'm gonna have to rewatch that one there.
I'm trying to digest it all to understand. I never did physics at school, but I'm trying to find how it relates to my body,
Mm.
center of gravity, how my body reacts or to the how all this what you've mentioned has an effect on my body, the plasma, the circulation, breathing, meditation, etc. I'm trying to digest it all.
No, it's really the fundamental background information to how when you hear music and it resonates with a part of your body, or when you do an exercise and your body releases a certain type of voltage, bringing
Yes.
your organ back into resonance. It's just the just the background information to how all that is possible, really. In our modern era, we're trying to explain everything. Application of it is only because we're feeling what we described here. So application is only truly in machinery because we're experiencing this scalar energy in a day-to-day experience. In everything that we do. So if we want to utilize it, just as we say yoga, tai chi, meditation, affirmation, or this is all redirecting the super potential field, redirecting what's in space around us in order or align, because that's the thing. We will say in scientific language, let's say that we are aligning the geometry. So all these things and all these atoms are falling into a geometrical pattern. But we don't need to say that. It just feels good. That's what we're talking about. It feels good, isn't it? But if we're looking at it from scientifically, we have to say that language now.
I mean, just align the mind.
So good. We go through life oblivious. Oh my goodness, my phone is ringing. Sorry, no. We go through life oblivious of, what is happening, and we just do things and without realizing, but it's so good. Wait a minute. Can I call you back, Sammy? Yeah. Yeah, but if we understood more, we would be more careful. We would take better care of our bodies. We would be one with the environment, with the universe, with whatever we do, there would be some significance. I'll call you back.
To be more mindful of our thoughts.
Yeah, we would be. Everything we do, we are not just operating in a void.
No, it's something, and it attracts to your intention and your thoughts.
Yeah, excellent. Food for thought. I mean, I haven't taken it all in, not even half of it.
I'm telling you, because all these different aspects, we're telling a story. We're also trying to understand how we can apply different aspects. These things do give us different clarity through what we see out there in the world. Like, it's just a growing experience. Different part of the puzzle coming together.
Yeah,
Other questions?
Definitely.
Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
The sound. Any questions on sound? Because we're always hearing this stuff from the other aspect, which is, I suppose, a different frequency. Because I thought Chris was going to go deep into the different frequencies, but we're always hearing it from this point of view. The frequencies, what we should listen to, what we should do, this aspect of it, but not how does it happen? What makes it work? And this is what science is really teaching us. Science is supposed to be there to teach us how things work. So when we are awoken, the greatest scientists on planet Earth, every individual, every person who is awoken or who desires enlightenment or is seeking clarity, you're really trying to understand every aspect of reality. And when you enter mysticism, then no one else's reality superimposes your own reality. No book or no description, nothing. If you haven't seen it or experienced it, if your two-eyed that is one hasn't experienced that reality, then yeah, we just let go of that one there. We just don't take that personal. This is the life of a mystic being. But when we start to add on other intention, other people's reality, we start to amass mass. Imagine that. Amassing mass from the field to keep it going.
And this is the difficulty I have with doing such presentations, because you want to really draw from your own experiences.
Yeah.
The more you go deep in it, make it very scientific and stuff like that, the more you realize that you're drawing from, more literature and theories. It's not even literature, it's more theories.
Yeah.
And these theories are not even really proven to be true. I mean, we've seen so many errors already when we've got longitudinal waves being depicted as that sine wave, one big error.
Yeah.
Then we've got other errors where, there's a separateness of electromagnetic, mechanical.
Yeah.
Some saying this is the same thing. Most saying it's not the same thing. So there's no clarity there. Then you've got
I'm saying.
researchers and people that haven't even, probably chanted in their life. So how do you understand sound and without really going through these experiences? Well, like they say, the best teachers are, you've got the teachers who know a lot but haven't experienced, and the real teachers just can't even express.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because the real teachers on the sound will be even some of the producers out there who know how to do magic, and who are creating magic, whether it's to deceive the people or liberate the people.
I see the magic I see is Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, well, there was that story with Jimmy when they asked him, he played his guitar and that, and someone wrote down all the notes, and they said, "Oh, hey, Jimmy, can you play these?" And Jimmy goes, "No, that's impossible."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He said that is impossible. And the guy said, "No, no, 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 you can't tell me that."
I think I remember the story now.
Yeah, you played it.
Yeah. Deep.
you know, or the guy that told Sam Cooke when to do his whales. And Sam Cooke said, "No, I can't just do it here. That's artificial. I have to feel it."
Yeah, that's right. You have to feel it.
Telling you,
You know?
you have to connect. And with the intention, it's just
Yeah.
so key. Build up
Yeah.
critical mass. Building up critical mass.
Mm.
That's what it's all about. But I do
Yeah.
like Jimi Hendrix because he did also make a statement in an interview that the music, they say the music is for the soul and the word is for the mind.
Mm.
Something about the melody itself is to capture the soul.
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
how I remember. That's how he described it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Jimi Hendrix
It's
putting them into psychedelic trance. You have to understand something. If he's looking
mm,
at the audience here and everyone's entering into altered state of reality, and he's only saying a few words,
yeah, that's the magic.
this is the magic that you mentioned there. Well, we've had everyone till late, and we've just been going hard into some deep topic, um, quantum physics, and I hope everyone really got an opportunity to understand a topic they may not really look into. And because we hear these terms thrown around a little bit, scalar, a little deeper understanding of what this actually means when we're talking about just a value, there's one value, but where this the build-up of mass changes it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, really interesting stuff. You
And really is.
The
Thank you.
future, the future.
Thing.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. So,
Okay.
is that a question there? I have a pain genie from Dr. Russ, and it's scalar tech, and it does work. Yeah,
Yeah, that's experience.
directly. And it's the same as those ones you can like pendants. wear around your neck.
Mm.
And those is working through resonance geometry. So that's resonating at a certain frequency, producing a certain geometry and affecting the immediate or that part of the body that requires
Mm.
that frequency, shifting its geometry into a coherent pattern, organizing the structure. But it's all about layers in its fractal nature. Sometimes I love it when science is so deep, when you start talking, using scientific language, not little words that will come in no more. It's like all of a
Mm.
sudden, it's just pure big words you have to use to describe to describe it. There's no and buts and there's no simple words. Each
No.
one. But it's the fractal nature of
Mm.
what's been of and what would it be? It's of the wave type released from a scalar device. What would that be? Electromagnetic, or would that be a mechanical wave?
Ooh, yeah, I've not used the technology myself. I
No, you
mean,
don't have to use it. Just use the
does this technology does it vibrate in any way when
no
it's being
scalar technology. There's no sound waves coming from that.
no, then that
No.
that that would be the electromagnetic component then.
Yeah.
The mechanical is always like that vibration, it's the vibration of your vocal cords that is causing it. And I always think of as well, even, we've got that inner hum, our body's got that inner hum to us.
Yeah.
But even just the way we move and walk is very mechanical at the same time. So,
You have a sound wave. It says mechanical. Oh, that's standing still, isn't it?
yeah, so
Do that.
mechanical, the longitudinal one, that's
Mm,
sitting. But we always think of mechanical as just sound, but when we look at Tai Chi, the force you're using is still mechanical energy.
yeah, that mechanical wave coming from the
You know,
ground.
yeah,
Essential.
and the way we walk
Thank
is
you.
very mechanical. A rhythm, the rhythm we walk.
That is
You know,
reorganizing the cells.
it's expressed in so many ways because you can walk a certain way, and just by how you've walked, you can restore your body to a type of, a beingness, a type you can walk a certain way and feel more at peace or feel energized just by the way you've walked.
Mm.
You could march a certain way and you can build up more energy just by the way you're marching.
But isn't that intention?
It is intention. But even through that intention, it's the build up, it's taking that physical manifestation, which is again producing more energy. And then that will take us to kind of like the muscles being energy batteries, where
Yeah.
it's built up, so we
You see?
I there's so many more ways that
Yeah.
mechanical
You see?
waves can be translated in.
That's interesting. You describe it that way then. Because then that
Mhm.
would be because you just pop into my mind all those energy pathways, energy channels, all those meridians, nadis,
Yeah,
chakras,
yeah,
vortexes,
yeah.
manas. Is there any more words just describing energy flow through the body or points?
Hmm. Even when we solve the air, the neurotransmitters, and the way they move and the way they affect the other things around it based on where it's moved to. And then that creating the action potential.
Mm.
So I feel when we try and separate things too much in the mind, we can miss out the bigger picture.
Of course, going beyond knowledge is a waste of time. Mm-mm. But it's where is the end of knowledge? Sometimes we don't even start. Yeah. But at the moment, I'm just thankful that energy and all this stuff here is kind of straightforward in my mind. That we're just looking at this electric scalar potential, this magnetic vector potential, and we're just looking the warping of space and time through gravity or through the ability of this, how the distance between stuff. And we're doing this like Tai Chi. Like I was describing yesterday, we was doing bone marrow washing. Like we're going overtime here, but let me just say this quick. We were doing bone marrow washing yesterday, and while I was doing it with them, because you do stuff in your own space, you experience stuff, you move forward. You're not really always just reflecting upon it like that to remember it later. But because I was experiencing it in the moment, I gave myself a chance to express it in the moment, where I'm like experiencing as I'm lowering my arms down like this. I'm just lowering my arms just in this fashion, entering into my breath, my intention, and we're going through the visualization. I'm like, my arm feels like it's floating in space. So my shoulder and everything's empty. So I feel like I'm just floating there. And as I'm going down, and it's going down slowly, it feels like beneath it's collapsing. Like I'm going through a space that's collapsing. And as it's slowing, going down lower, it's going through a space that's like dissipating. As opposed to, it's an energetic feeling. So that's like, when I relate that, I'm like, okay, that's like, because gravity itself is fractal in its nature. And we have geometry, layers of geometry going on here underneath. And like we're just disengaging one fractal layer of geometry and going down, another layer of fractal geometry and going down. This is if I now use physics to describe what I just experienced, which is just lowering my arm down. And this feels like there's something disappearing. Like every minute, it's like I just feel something, a weight gone. Like I just feeling weight, like I'm in a viscous solution. I'm in something that is thick. And that space that's underneath me is vanishing. This is scalar again.
No, like modern day textbook physics is not describing that.
I'm telling you. This is why I've been searching for the last 20 years trying to understand this stuff, Christos. Because they're not describing what we experience. They're not doing it.
But we do know, because every time I do bone marrow washing, I'm feeling as if the bone marrow is being washed.
Yeah. See?
And I certainly wouldn't be doing it for the sake of just doing it, because then that would be just a waste of energy. But I'm doing it because of what I'm experiencing. So yeah,
Oh, Sahu, I tried to send you my email address twice, and I sent the message in response to the classes, and of course, they came back undelivered. Can I have your email address, please, again, so I could send it directly to you?
Can we just write that in the chat there?
Thank you.
Well, I was wondering what was going on. How come I never
Yeah, I tried twice, but the two different classes, I just sent reply, and they all came back undelivered.
All right, so Parky School at protonmail.net. You should be able to email me with that one there.
Yeah.
No, hold on. Not .net, sorry, .com. .com. I'm glad I read it and looking at
.com, okay.
.com. At protonmail.com. All right.
Yeah, I think that's all questions asked, and everyone's feeling a little bit better about the information and what to do with it.
hope. I hope we get a little clarity. Some future applications from, if not yourself, our children. This is the future. We're not going backwards here. We're just growing and expanding. All right, family. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having us this evening.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Yes, Mum. It's a two-way experience. Because you know, the greatest gift is offering someone your time, your ears. Most definitely.
Thank you. It's so much sense. Experience is the greatest teacher. Indeed.
Trying to understand our experiences.
Yeah, we have to understand. Yeah.
This is the study. This is what I'm here. We're here to help support you lot with.
Thank you.
All right, Jamie. Have a good evening as well. All right, everyone.
All right, take care.
Good night, all.
All right, good night, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. All right.